What is the equivalent to the circle of fifths on the guitar fretboard? What is the circle of fifths transformed into this grid? What is the process to take the information you get from studying the circle of fifths and applying it on this instrument? This is obviously not a circle. We are literally taking one geometry, one geometric diagram, and projecting it onto this grid. What are we concerned about when we think about the circle of fifths? Well, we're concerned about fifths, obviously, and fourths, because if you're thinking about fifths, you're thinking about fourths. The circle of fifths is a tool for understanding sort of compositional, tonal key relationships. Key signatures are embedded in the circle of fifths. Going from one key to another around the circle means you're going between two keys. If you go from one key to the next key in the circle, two keys that share all of their notes but one. So if you're going from the key of C to the key of G, you're not just playing a C chord and then a G chord. You're also playing or considering all of the chords that belong to both keys. And of course, they have a bunch of chords in common, and they have a couple of chords that are different. And you can study that, and you can know that. And again, how do we sort of plot that geometry on the guitar? How do we understand what happens when we go from one key to another? Let's say we are thinking about the key of C. How do we know where all the notes are in the key of C to begin with? Because if we want to get this down, if you want to know how you go from one key to another and how you can use the circle of fifths to do that, well, it helps to know where the notes are in each and every key. Now, if you go from the key of C to the key of G, you're going to have 6 of the 7 notes the same and 1 note different. The key of G has an F sharp. The key of C has an F instead. Otherwise, all the other notes are the same. But it's not just a matter of changing that F to an F sharp, because that F in the key of C is the 4th note of the key, and that F sharp in the key of G is the 7th. So really, that F sharp is replacing the B, not the F. See what I'm saying? If you're playing an F sharp in the key of G, you're playing the 7th note of the key of G. If you're playing a B in the key of C, you're playing the 7th note of the key of C. If you're playing a B in the key of G, you're playing the 3rd note. So the notes have functionality, and that functionality is what we're concerned with, because playing within a key means you understand all that. You understand all those tonal relationships. You know when you're playing a 1, a 4, or a 5. So those relationships on the fretboard follow their own geometry. The simplest way to access that is to think about the fret positions where the notes of the key align. What do I mean? Well, think about the open strings, E, A, D, G, B, E. Those open strings are an alignment of the notes, each of which belongs to the key of C. If you're in the key of C, the note C is note number 1. And you have a set of notes, none of which are sharp or flat. And they have a particular organization, a geometry, if you will, on the fretboard. We could call that a geometric key signature. The geometric key signature of the key of C features all the open string notes, E, A, D, G, B, E, all the notes on the 5th fret, A, D, G, C, E, A, all the notes on the 10th fret, D, G, C, F, A, D. Now there are other places where you can find notes in the key of C that fall in between those 3 positions, but those are the 3 places on the fretboard where the notes of the key of C align in an individual fret position in each case. The open strings, the 5th fret, and the 10th fret each feature a note belonging to the key of C on every string in that position. Now that is only true of those 3 positions, and of course the 12th fret, which is the open strings again. That will always be true. The 12th fret will always be the same notes as the open strings because that is where we find the octave on each string. So we can sort of consider that simply as a repetition of the same phenomenon, the same group of notes. And I like to call each of these positions an axis. There are 3 axis positions in every key, and each of those axis positions will be tied, let's say, to the notes 2, 3, and 6. 2, 3, and 6 of the key relative to the major key degrees. In other words, if you're in the key of C, 2 is D, 3 is E, and 6 is A. So if we have the open strings as an axis, that's 3, because E is the 3rd key degree. And so every note on the open strings is part of the 3 axis, and I like to use the mode name to define that axis, and so I call it the Phrygian axis, because the Phrygian mode is the 3rd mode of the key, of whatever key. The 5th fret, A, D, G, C, E, A, that is the Aeolian axis, the 6, and the 10th fret, D, G, C, F, A, D, that is the Dorian axis, because Dorian is the 2nd mode, and D is the 2nd note of the key of C. Every key has these 3 positions, and they are based on the structure of the key, and they define the structure of the key on the fretboard. So I like to think of them as the geometric key signature for each key. Now, if we're in the key of G, we still have the open strings, E, A, D, G, B, E. All those notes are in the key of G. And we still have the 5th fret, A, D, G, C, E, A. All those notes are in the key of G. But we do not have the 10th fret, D, G, C, F, A, D, because the note F is not in the key of G. G has an F sharp, not an F. Where is the other axis? Remember, there are always 3. Well, B, E, A, D, F sharp, and B, the 7th fret, is an axis in the key of G. And which one is which? Well, we just have to think about the key of G, where G is 1, so A is 2. So the axis on the 5th fret, A, D, G, C, E, A, that is now the Dorian axis. And B is the 3rd note in the key of G, so B, E, A, D, F sharp, B, the axis on the 7th fret, that is the Phrygian axis. And the open strings, E, A, D, G, B, E, the 12th fret, that is the Aeolian axis in the key of G. So the Aeolian axis in the key of G is the Phrygian axis in the key of C. The Dorian axis in the key of G is the Aeolian axis in the key of C, and the Phrygian axis, the 7th fret, in the key of G, that's not in the key of C. So we can say by playing the open strings, the 5th fret, and the 7th fret, all the notes on those positions, add the 12th fret in again, that's defining the structure of the key of G. Now we can build off of that, but those notes are just easy to find. Now where the rest of the notes are, easy enough, but not that easy. A little more complicated. We have to know where the half steps fall in the key, where the notes fall in between those axis positions. But start with those axes. Just start with them. Use that to find everything else. And then you have 3 positions on the fretboard in every key that you can find very easily just by looking for 2, 3, and 6, those 3 numbers. Whatever key you're in, look for the 2 of the key, the 3 of the key, and the 6 of the key, and you can be absolutely certain that every note on each one of those frets will be part of the key that you're in. Now, what does that have to do with the circle of fifths? Well, the circle of fifths is all about key signatures, right? It's all about going from one key to another. And if you can't find the notes on the fretboard in whatever key you're thinking about playing in, you're kind of at a disadvantage. You want to know where the notes are. At this point, I'd like to thank everyone who has subscribed to my channel. I really appreciate it. If you haven't already subscribed, please do. Like, subscribe. Let me know what you think in the comments. And again, thank you. The circle of fifths as a concept does not exist in written form until the year 1677, when a Russian composer and theoretician, Nikolai Diletski first publishes his treatise on the grammar of music, which includes an entry on the circle of fifths. This is centuries after the concepts that are encapsulated in that idea are in actual practice. So the idea of fifths as building blocks of musical harmony, of key structure, etc., 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 this is not arbitrary. The thing we call the fifth and the fourth, these are harmonic structures. They exist in nature. This is the way things vibrate. It's not an accident that when you play a harmonic on the guitar, that these are the intervals that stand out the most. And the fourth and the fifth are regarded as perfect intervals for this reason. The idea of a perfect interval as opposed to, say, major and minor. The major and minor intervals, the thirds, the seconds, the sixths, the sevenths, these are all actually derived from the fifth. And how does that happen? Well, let me show you what I mean. Let's say we start on F, and then we go to C. F, G, A, B, C, that's a perfect fifth. And when we go from C to G, that's another perfect fifth. And G to D, perfect fifth. D to A, perfect fifth. A to E, perfect fifth. And E to B, there's all the notes. All the notes of the key are created by stacking fifths. F, C, G, D, A, E, and B. And the distance from B back to F, the tritone. Now, of course, stacking fifths gives you a series of ascending pitches that are not all in the same octave space, but that's easy enough to just shrink everything back down once you have those notes, once you've established those pitches based on that principle of stacking fifths. Now, this goes all the way back to Pythagoras. This is a method that, has been baked into the diatonic system from the beginning. And it takes till 1677, approximately, for this idea to become a kind of symbol, the circle of fifths, for it to be formalized into a symbol that becomes a compositional tool in Western diatonic music. But prior to that, the idea of stacking fifths, well, that was always there. It's not so strange that instruments like violins, cellos, violas, and the guitar are tuned either to fourths or fifths primarily. Many, many, many instruments are tuned using the fourth or the fifth as the basis for their tuning system. To understand how the fourth and the fifth relate to the guitar is essential in understanding how the notes are distributed on the fretboard. It is not about scales. It is not about chords. First, it is about intervals. It is about fourths. It is about fifths. Those positions of those notes, that's what you need to be familiar with to understand how the circle of fifths relates to the fretboard. So the next part of this video is going to feature a lot of motion graphics and narration and all that stuff to present to you my take on how the circle of fifths and the notes on the guitar fretboard are connected to each other. So I hope this makes some sense to you all, and I hope you enjoy it. I hope you get a lot out of this. I put a lot into it. And once again, thank you for all your support.
Music is made up of rhythmic and tonal patterns. Rhythms consist of beats which may be grouped into measures, units of time, textures of sonic motion. Tonality combines with rhythm, adding another dimension, expanding on the beat, adding expressiveness in the way that inflections of speech express ideas and emotions and tell stories. The patterns of beats and melodies, rhythms and harmonies are the substance of musical experience. One of the central icons of diatonic music is a circle representing the interlocking interval structures we call fifths and fourths. These two intervals are not just arbitrary numbers, but represent the natural harmonic relationships between musical pitches, which comprise all of the keys, chords, and tones of the diatonic system. Fifths run clockwise in the circle. Fourths counterclockwise. In addition to the fourths and fifths in consecutive positions on the circle, a triangle will point to major thirds and their enharmonic equivalents. The corners of a square will show us minor thirds and their enharmonic equivalents. A hexagon will point to whole steps, or major seconds. The outer ring of the circle represents major, minor on the inside. The major and minor modes of each key could be seen as part of a continuum extending downward into the circle in thirds. The three minor and three major chords of every key are revealed in every three adjacent positions. Any position on the outer ring of the circle can be labeled 1 and become the tonic of a major key and the root of that key's tonic chord. On the inner circle next to it, its relative minor, the 6. Counterclockwise, we'll find the 4, and its relative minor chord, the 2. Clockwise to the 5, its relative minor, the 3, and we'll return to the tonic. But the circle is not simply a tool for finding 1-4-5 major and 6-2-3 minor chord patterns. Its original and primary function is to organize diatonic keys and their key signatures for purposes of composition and harmonic analysis. The key of C, the natural key with no sharps or flats, is at the top. Keys with sharps are on the right side of the circle, and keys containing flats are on the left. If we go counterclockwise on the left, we add a flat with each successive key. If we go clockwise on the right side of the circle, we add a sharp with each successive key. From the key of D, the second key on the right side of the circle with 2 sharps, we'll go to the third key on the left side of the circle, E flat, which has 3 flats and 4 natural tones. Likewise, the third key on the right, the key of A, has 3 sharps and 4 natural tones. The key of A flat has only 3 natural tones to its 4 flats. The key of E has 3 natural tones to its 4 sharps. D flat is the 5th key on the left side of the circle, with 5 flats and only 2 natural tones. With 5 sharps and 2 natural tones, the key of B is the 5th key on the right. And in the 6 o'clock position, with 6 flats and 6 sharps, respectively, the enharmonic keys of G flat and F sharp. These 2 keys share the same set of pitches, but give each a different name. And though they're often included, we're leaving out the keys of C sharp and C flat for now. So with flats on the left and sharps on the right, of which each key has a different number, we have a circle containing every key in the diatonic system, every note in every key, and a logical way to explore and examine the harmonic relationships between them. Let's consider pentatonic scales. Any 5 consecutive positions on the circle comprise the notes of a pentatonic scale, organized in fourths and fifths. Every diatonic key contains 3 pentatonic scales, including the major and minor mode for each. The key of C contains C major A minor, F major D minor, and G major E minor. Each pentatonic scale has 1 major third and 2 minor thirds. Extending each sequence by 2 notes gives us all the notes of every diatonic key arranged in fourths and fifths. The major tonic will be the 2nd note in each sequence. The minor tonic will be the 5th note. Going clockwise from the 1st note to the last, the 1st note will be the 4th of the key, and the last note in each pattern will be the 7th of the key. These end notes span the diameter of the circle, forming the tritone of each key. The tritone splits octaves and connects keys by creating tension that can lead from one key to another. Now, let's look at what happens when we want to apply some of these concepts on the guitar fretboard. The guitar is tuned in fourths ascending, with one exception, and, with one exception, fifths descending. Fifths can also be found by going diagonally from one string to another and skipping a fret, as shown. Though between the G and the B string, that pattern of fifths will give us a tritone, and the tritone can be found between other pairs of strings just by going from one string to the next and one fret to the next. All the sharps and flats form patterns of their own on the guitar. How do we know when to call a note sharp or flat? Take the note we could call A sharp or B flat. B flat is the 4th of F, and A sharp is the 7th of B.
Context will tell you which is which. Since every key has 7 notes, and there are 12 notes in the entire system, there are 5 notes missing from each key, and those 5 notes form a pentatonic scale of their own. In the right order, they also form a 6-9 chord. The 6-9 chord shares its root with the major pentatonic scale. This F6-9 consists of the notes missing from the key of B. The 5 sharps of the key of B are those same notes that were missing from the key of C. Each diatonic key contains 3 pentatonic scales and is missing the notes of a 4th pentatonic scale. Remember that the interval structure of the tuning of the guitar, 4th, 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 major 3rd, 4th, results in each fret position containing all the notes of a pentatonic scale. As it happens, any sequence of 4 fourths and 1 major 3rd will comprise the notes of a pentatonic scale. There are 5 groups on the fretboard arranged accordingly. This one is rooted in G-flat major on the 6th string. This one has a major 3rd on the 4th string, E major. Now D-flat major, rooted on the 2nd string. B major on the 5th string. And finally, A-flat major, rooted on the 3rd string. Keep in mind that every pentatonic scale has a major mode and a minor mode. In this case, the major mode, tonic, is A-flat. We'll call that 1. And the minor tonic is F, which gets the number 6. No matter what key, if we call the major mode 1, the minor mode will be 6. What will happen if we take these 3 positions and examine the relationships between each pentatonic grouping? Each position will have a major tonic on the 3rd string and its relative minor tonic on the 6th and 1st string. For now, we'll just label the 6th string minor in the diagram. The notes of the pentatonic scales of G major E minor and A major F sharp minor are all in the key of D. So the G major and A major pentatonic scales are the 4 and 5 of the key of D respectively, which also means that the E minor and F sharp minor are the 2 and 3 of D. So while the 2 blue groups both represent the key of D, the yellow outline group in the middle is the tritone related key of A flat. We'll come back to this concept a little bit later and see how it plays out across the entire fretboard. Meanwhile, we've already seen how the guitar is said to be tuned in fourths, and that fourths and fifths are inversions of each other. By default, the lower pitch note is the root of an interval, which gives the interval its primary numerical designation. But any interval can be inverted. When moving around on the fretboard, it may be more practical to play an inversion than a root position interval, depending upon where it fits in the overall scheme of the music. Here, we'll plot out the paths you might follow on the 2 lowest strings when playing the notes of the circle of fifths in sequence starting from C. We start with an inversion, then a root fifth, inversion again, root fifth, inversion, root fifth, inversion, another inversion. You can see how this is going to go. Let's hear what it sounds like. Parenthetically, in the interest of symmetry, 2 note positions have been omitted from the pattern, C sharp D flat and B sharp C, as shown, since we only need 1 instance of each note. Now let's play the same pattern across 3 strings instead of 2, and in a smaller fret span. Both directions this time.
Expanding the three-string pattern across more fret spaces makes it a bit less convoluted. Let's move the pattern one string up. The simplest overall path to playing the widest range of fourths and fifths covers three strings all the way up and down the neck. There are many symmetries within the diatonic system. One of the more fascinating aspects of diatonic symmetry is the relationship between natural tones and the sharps and flats, like we might find on the black and white keys of the piano, for instance. If we move outward from the 6th fret on the 3rd, 4th, and 5th strings, we can see an expression of this symmetry. In this grouping, the note positions of the tonic third in the key of C and the equivalent notes in the key of G flat become landmarks connecting these two tritone-related keys. Looking at pentatonic relationships in both keys, more symmetries emerge. The guitar is not linear like the piano, so the symmetries are multidimensional. Take your time to study them. The symmetries are radial or rotational, meaning that they can be seen extending outward from a central point in all directions. Here, the notes of C major pentatonic are highlighted, with the tonic third of the key outlined in blue. Now let's highlight G flat major pentatonic and outline its tonic third in blue. Because there's only one major third in each pentatonic scale, it will define each scale's interval symmetry. Returning to a wider view, we can see that each alignment of three adjacent notes on any fret position is a 1-4-5 pattern. The middle note is the 1, the upper note is the 4, and the lower note is the 5. These note positions are the roots of all the major and minor chords in every key. Here are the three major chords in the key of C, rooted on the three lowest strings, and the three minor chords rooted on those same strings. The major chords on the 3rd, 4th, and 5th strings, and the minor chords as well. On the 5th fret, we find the notes of the C major A minor pentatonic scale aligned. The open strings in the 10th fret comprise the two other pentatonic alignments, which we'll call axis positions, and we'll number them based on the key degree of their lowest and highest notes. When we move to the key of G, the next key in the circle of fifths, we see a different symmetrical organization. Axis positions 2 and 3 that were formerly at the 10th and 12th frets, respectively, are now on the 5th and 7th frets, while the 12th fret and open strings are now the 6th axis. Of course, there will always be a whole step between 2 and 3, and there will always be a perfect fourth from 3 to 6, and from 6 to 2. We could use mode names to describe these axis positions. The 6 would be Aeolian, the 2 Dorian, the 3 Phrygian, but for now we'll stick with the numbers. Notice the relationships of the major and minor chord roots to the axis positions. In each case, one set will fall between axes, and the other will be on an axis. The lattice of notes on the guitar can be confusing, but we can find melodic and harmonic pathways by learning a few basic patterns and understanding their logical structure. These are pentatonic patterns rooted in G-flat major and E-flat minor. The G-flat major third can be used as a reference point to find all the notes in each of these paths. Once you locate the major third, all the other intervals from string to string in each of these paths is a perfect fourth. I've chosen G-flat pentatonic because it consists of all the notes absent from the key of C, and because it's exactly halfway around the circle from C. If we tune the guitar down a half step to E-flat standard, the symmetry of these patterns will be much clearer, as will the symmetrical relationship between G-flat and C. Notice the open strings in 12th fret are axis positions in which the major tonic is on the 3rd string and the minor tonic is on the 1st and 6th strings. We can call these the Aeolian axis or just the 6th. Isolating the 3 low strings simplifies the geometry. Every pentatonic scale contains one minor triad and one major triad. Easy to find in this grouping. The major third is shared by both triads. Now let's look at the pattern of the 4 upper strings. The minor triad and the major triad appear once again, symmetrically positioned, as do the major thirds. On the guitar fretboard, the clearest expression of the interlocking nature of the key of G-flat and the key of C is found by studying their axis positions. With the guitar tuned down a half step, the 3 axis positions of the key of C are the 1st fret, the 6th, and the 11th frets. The axes for the key of G-flat are found on the open strings, the 5th and 7th frets, and the 12th fret. The equivalent degrees of both keys will always be a tritone apart, and so their equivalent axes are a tritone apart. In the fret spaces not occupied by the axes of C and G-flat, we find the axes of the keys of A and E-flat. This juxtaposition of these 4 keys on the fretboard is precisely analogous to the positions of the same 4 keys in the circle of fourths and fifths. Returning to E standard tuning, let's see how the tritone can act as a pivot between keys. Musical ideas like key modulation, tension and resolution, tritone substitution, and other harmonic and melodic concepts are connected through a kind of tonal geometry. Fundamental aspects of that geometry are expressed through the circle and through the grid of the guitar fretboard. The circle is essentially theoretical. The fretboard is essentially mechanical. The bridge between the two is your understanding of both and your musical imagination.